I'm Kristen Russell, and this is the Wholly Empowered podcast, where we dive into all things holistic healing and open our minds, hearts, and paradigms to new ideas so we can live our most empowered, healthy, joyful lives. Let's talk about some patterns you notice, like typical patterns with these clients you're working with. I know we've talked about a few. I don't know if we covered all of them, but I want to make sure we cover that because that was something we had chatted about that I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, I think we've covered, I think the core ones are the ones that will get you unstuck, right? Let me think what other patterns. Oh, yeah. There's definitely, yeah, okay. I guess there'd be patterns in, I'll just kind of review them real quick because I
Yeah.
think they're similar, but like showing up in relationships as like, I've got to earn everything. Another way to say that would be like feeling like you're in debt to everybody constantly. Oh, I owe, I'm got to keep track of how much they've given me so I can make sure I give just as much or more. Fear of vulnerability, having a really hard time to sharing honestly. There's a lot. So, there's the idea that you're lying and holding, I don't know why I did air quotes. There's the idea that you're lying and doing, you're lying about pornography, right? I'm hiding this from everyone. Most people have convinced themselves that porn is the big thing they're hiding, but I think that they're almost always hiding way more than porn. They're hiding their identity, their their thoughts, their feelings, their opinions, right? Like when their wife says, "Hey, can you do this, or do you want to go help with this?" Instead of saying, "No, I don't. Can we find a way to do this that works for both of us?" They say, "Yeah, I'll do it," and then they fill up with resentment, right? So there's this like hiding of what you really think, struggling with boundaries, not knowing how to enforce a boundary. They'll either go to like super weak boundaries, like people can just step all over them, and then they'll pendulum swing to like angry outbursts and just like trying to hurt people, punishing them for hurting them, but not knowing how to stand confident in a boundary. I'm trying to think what else. People pleasing, I said. Yeah, a lot of these, honestly, a lot of them are almost, I see them as branches off of the same root, right? It's like I feel powerless, so I people please. I feel powerless, so I look for fake ways to get my desires. There's a lot of like self-punishment, I would say. Like I need to beat, oh, like every single dude, for real. You could say, oh, you struggle with porn, and then you could be like, so do you feel like you're hard on yourself? Like, oh yeah, harder than myself than anybody else. Like that's just classic. And I know a lot of people who don't struggle with porn also do that, but like what's interesting is, I think we talked about this before, but like when I work with people, about 90% of the conversation is about this stuff. It's not about porn. It's about like, how do you feel about yourself, relationships? Are you beating yourself up all the time? Like we talk about that stuff, and interestingly, the porn problem goes away. So yeah.
Yeah. I think that's hopefully that is something like that's something we just don't think about, in relation to porn. And so I'm hoping that'll kind of help people just see like, oh yeah, there are things here that I can work through that aren't that scary. And but I'm
Oh
curious, I
yeah.
don't know. Oh, so go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
was just going to tag onto that really
Yeah.
lightly. One of my clients, one of the coolest things I've ever heard, we were like a couple months into working together, and he said, "This is the most fun I've ever had." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Oh, just getting to like learn about myself and ask new questions and realize that I'm not like a broken thing. I'm not a man that's broken and just can't stop using porn. I'm a dude with like some parts of me that hurt really bad. And as we resolve it, he's like getting to feel more joy, learn about himself, understand himself, understand his wife, understand others. So I honestly think it's a beautiful journey from day one if you're looking at the roots. If you start from a place of shame, it's going to hurt the whole way through. And you might get out, you might get healed. I don't know. But in my experience, it can be a joyful journey from like right now. Like if you messed up and relapsed or whatever word you like, you looked at porn last night, that's hard. It's not a fun feeling, but like kind of like shake it off and start to ask yourself some hard questions. You can find joy right there. Find someone that you trust and talk to them, or come talk to me and I'll ask you some deep questions, but with a ton of compassion, and it can be joyful, like for real right now. So
Yeah. That's so empowering. And yeah, I feel like people don't experience that with this. So I just love what you're doing. But I'm curious, I'm guessing you don't talk to the spouses or the partners of your clients. You're probably not getting their feedback, but
Sometimes.
sometimes. Yeah, I'm curious how what the women or the wives or whoever, are saying about how their relationship dynamics are shifting as you're working with these guys and they're seeing progress and they're changing. Because I think that's from the partner's perspective, that's so hard. You're kind of dealing with a lot of at least like women I've talked to in my own experience dating people, you often feel like your boundaries are not respected, or you kind of feel like an object, or they're being selfish, or they're not seeing you fully. And that's really hard. And I'm just curious if that also is shifting, as I would assume it would, at least somewhat, but I'm curious if the partner's seeing that, you know?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it for sure depends on each couple.
Yeah.
Oh man, I had so many thoughts while you're talking because I do think, like I said, there needs to be room for both partners to feel through. Like I'll have some clients, like I said, who their wife is like, all right, let's work together. Let's like build some closeness. That's amazing when that can happen. And then there's also clients who are like, wow, I'm feeling so hurt right now. I can't believe you would be looking at porn without telling me all these years. And that's also that's an okay response. That's a normal response to like what's going on. And so I think creating space for both of them to kind of feel through that. The ultimate goal is to come together and start to create again together. I think, let's see, I was going to go into like a perspective, but I want to answer your question of like, how do they actually see the shift? I would say that for the couples that are willing to go here, I see an increase of like vulnerability, accountability. Like the three principles I really hit a lot are like being vulnerable, accountable, and then abundant, like trusting that you can create what you want. So like a way I would illustrate that is a lot of couples even before porn came out and before they knew that's what they were dealing with, the dynamic typically has a lot of expectation on it. So husband expects this of the wife, and the wife is like, well, now I expect this of you. Can you feel the like debt exchange, right? You're in debt to me so that you'll do the thing I need you to do, and we're going to toss that debt around. So again, this is the old pattern before the healing. There's a lot of need language. I need you to do this. I need you to support me. I need you to validate me. And it's very bitter and resentful. And that would be from both parties, right? I'm not saying just the wife.
Mhm.
Whereas when people choose to heal and shift into a better way, it turns more to like, I'm trying to think if this illustrates it quickly. It's a pretty deep concept or like complex concept, but like the energy or the tone on the conversation shifts to like, hey, would it be a win for you to do this? Or I would love to connect in this way. Is that a win for you? And then wife is like, well, no, that's not quite a win for me today, but I would love to connect in this way. How do you feel about that? And then then he's like, oh, sweet, let's totally connect that way. Can you feel how there's an honest, it's like all your cards are out on the table instead of like holding your cards and trying to get your
Mhm.
spouse to do what you need them to do, what you think you need them to do. It's like true honesty where like both of us are being honest about how we feel, what we desire, but having a trust that I'm like getting a little in the weeds here, but like basically trusting that I can create a life that I love and I don't need you to like fix the thing I'm scared of as a spouse. I don't need my spouse to like rescue me from my fear about and honestly, I think a really poignant place where this would show up would be like with sex, where the husband's like, well, I need sex. And that's the old conversation is I need to have sex or because I've got so much sex drive. And she's like, well, I'm not in the mood. Do you want me to just sacrifice myself? Right. There's like the debt exchange where it would shift to like essentially this question of like, okay, I'm feeling in the mood. Are you feeling in the mood? Would you be down to connect in that way? And then she's like, no, I'm not. But, is there a place where we can build a bridge of desire of like, I would love to do this. Would you love to do that? And see them connect instead of building connection out of like, I'm going to hurt if you don't. I'm going to feel I'm going to feel uncomfortable if you don't give me what I need. I'm going to be mad at you. Or, I've been working so hard all day. I can't believe, and then the wife's like, well, I've been working with the kids all day. I just want to relax. Like there's all these classic conversations that if you look at underneath, you'll find that it's really tossing around like a debt thing. Like I've suffered this much debt and you need to suffer now. Or like, when am I going to get what I want and what I deserve? And instead we shift out of that to like, I'll be vulnerable and say, I'm super in the mood today, to my spouse, like, I'm super in the mood. If you're not, that's okay. I'm confident that I can figure it out, or like, there's kind of this like empowered version of trying to create a relationship versus I feel weak. I need you to fix me. Is that,
Yeah.
was that too complex of a way to answer that?
No, I think that made a lot of sense. And what I'm seeing is people are able to work more as an actual team and like friends, where they're,
Ugh, like
that's what it
equals.
sounds like. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of, because
Instead of a
a lot of,
martyr
yeah,
manipulation
yeah.
tactics situation.
Yeah, hero, victim, villain. That's one of the things I talk about so much. I just had this thought about, oh, like me and my wife, I'm thinking like several years back, looking at the pattern, it would be like, and maybe a lot of people can relate to this, but I would see this like, okay, with our spiritual life, with like church, I'm the better one because I'm like, oh, we got to go be on time to church, we got to make sure we pray and read our scriptures. So I would put myself above. And then like with money, she would put herself like, oh no, she's more being more responsible with money. Right. And so we'd flip flop to like, well, no, I'm above you in this. And so you need to like help me this way. And she's like, well, I'm above you over here. And so it's like you said, we turn into it, we practice becoming a team, working as actual friends that respect each other and honor. It's like that's another huge shift that people would see in their husband is like the energy behind what he's saying, or hopefully the actual words would be like, oh, I'd never want you to say yes to something that doesn't feel like a win to you. But what's interesting is that mm, a lot of those situations, it's really hard for the spouse, for the wife, to also be okay with their husband saying no to other things, right? Hey, can you help me with this? If your husband isn't allowed to say no, then he's not really saying yes. And it's the same thing with sex. If your wife isn't allowed to say no, then she's not really saying yes. So you got to give people the freedom to like, well, I don't want you to say yes because I want you to say yes. I want to know, where are you at? Does this sound fun to you? Does this, you know, and it's really cool because in in these different scenarios, it brings opportunity for a difficult conversation that turns to like real connection on something even as simple as like doing the dishes. I think I'm flashing back to like I used to have so much resentment because my wife would be like, hey, can you do the dishes? And I'd be like I'd say yes, but then I'd be like, oh, stupid dishes. My wife's always making me, telling me what to do. It's like, dude, you've never said no. I had never said no. I had just said yes and sat in the resentment. So what's cool as an example, instead of just saying yes, I can say, oh, I don't really want to do them. I'd be down to do them like later tonight, or like you start to look for creative solutions, or like, hey, do you want to do them with me? Or like, hey, she's with the kids, whatever. But you could almost be like, hey, do you want to like listen to an audiobook together while I do the dishes? Or do you want to come have a conversation and play 20 questions with me while I do it? And can you see how there's like, instead of this tossing around of debt, it's replaced with a trust that I can create a situation I love, which is like, oh, I would actually love doing the dishes if we were talking. Are you down to do that? And so you get creative instead of like punishy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so fun to see that. And it's not going to be a flip of a switch. We're like, oh,
Mhm.
boom. I mean, for most couples, there's going to be some really hard conversations. And the hardest part is going to be just opening your mouth and actually saying what's in your heart in an accountable way. But
Mhm.
after that, it's like, it's so beautiful. It's awesome.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. And I think what you were saying about when the energy changes, the way you're speaking to each other, and it kind of, I feel like that's key. Like, like the, I don't want you to say no if you don't want to say no, and like actually meaning it.
Mm-hmm.
That's that's where it, I feel like that's the key thing.
It's so key.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, right there too, like you can, because I love the three principle idea here. To say it again, it's to be vulnerable, accountable, and abundant. So there's this cool, like, I don't want you to say no if you, or, I don't want you to say yes unless that's what you really want. And then you can even be more vulnerable and say, like, okay, part of me does want you to say yes, but I'm going to let go of that. Right. It's like a really accountable version of being vulnerable. Because some people hear vulnerable and they're like, oh, you want me to like be weak? I'm like, no, dude, I want you to be confidently vulnerable, where you're like abundant, you're accountable, and you're vulnerable is one of the most powerful combinations. Where I can tell my wife, like, hey, I'll be honest, if when you said no, like I am experiencing some emotions about that. I'm feeling kind of lonely, but it's not your fault. It's just my emotion. And I want to like thank you for letting me voice it. Would you be down to talk about, you know, something? Do you want to talk? Do you want to like, can I tell you more about what I'm feeling? Or would that be a win for you? There's this way of like, I think it's related to the outsourcing thing, right? Like I'm not outsourcing anything to her. I don't need her to fix the way I feel. I'm like, I am down to stand in my own space and feel all of it. Like, holy cow, I'm feeling so much rage about whatever. The kids are misbehaving, but that's my rage. It's me. And would you be down to talk about it? Whatever. Like, it's this really cool mix of being vulnerable, like humble, and then also super accountable. And honestly, I think you become unstoppable. And this applies to anything, not just pornography. This applies to like anything. If you can be vulnerable, accountable, and abundant, like nothing can stop you.
Yeah.
And if you can
Yeah.
observe, like that's one of my biggest cues right now. Is like, oh, okay, I'm not being vulnerable. I'm hiding. That's a sign for me to practice. Like I try to track, when am I being not vulnerable? When am I being not accountable? When am I blaming other people? When am I being scarce instead of abundant? And just trying to practice those three, it's like it'll change your whole life.
Yeah. I'm like taking notes. Like this is good stuff.
Awesome.
I want to talk about masculinity,
Nice. I
like
almost bridged us over
healthy.
there just barely.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as you were talking, I was like, oh yeah, healthy masculine. Like, let's talk because that's something you cover a lot in your coaching, correct? So I feel like there's a lot of it's kind of a popular thing right now, a little bit in some
Mhm.
circles. And sometimes I think the masculine gets there's kind of some parading it as just alpha male a little
Mhm.
bit. And I think I don't know. Tell me your thoughts, but I feel like it's so much more than that. And that's not really what it's kind of missing the mark. But
Yeah, I do too. I mean, honestly, a lot of the thoughts we were just talking about, I love this
mhm,
like opposite, right? There's this healthy opposite of like a tender father, that tenderness of a father that's like, I love my kids. And then also like the warrior on the other side that's like, and I will protect truth.
mhm,
So there's these opposites. Same with like being vulnerable. It's like it's more of a tender thing, but with the like powerful accountability. It's like, and boom, I can create, like these are my emotions and I'm willing to talk about them. I love the question just to like break through one of the classic cliche things that people say about men, about emotions. Men will be like, oh, emotions are so weak, masculinity is whatever. I think here's a cool question. Which one sounds more powerful, someone who's afraid to say what they're actually feeling, or someone who's willing to say what they're feeling and face it? I think that might encompass masculinity right there. So this is what I think and feel, and I will face it and be
mhm.
accountable for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's one little anecdote, I guess. Generally speaking, more like philosophical. I think masculine is about structure, creating structure and space for the feminine. It's very direct. I mean, since we're talking about sex and pornography and stuff, I think honestly a really cool metaphor for masculinity is to think about like the genitals. Like the penis is pointed and direct and it moves through, right? Sorry for those who are like, oh, that's a little too direct, but masculinity is direct and pointed and like creative. Let's go create this. Where the feminine is more receiving and open. the feminine can be about like all the possibilities of creation, where the masculine is about the pointed, like, let's choose this thing and create it together. Yeah, I don't know. Thoughts on that from you? That's about where I would go.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I know a little bit more about the feminine. And so, but I love how they do just really complement each other. And I feel like when you can get into a nice flow where you're really kind of feeling into those traits,
Mhm.
it kind of puts you naturally in like a good dynamic if it's healthy, you know?
Yeah,
Some of the shifts you were talking about that men make around being able to speak up and being able to be confident and just the three things you mentioned when we
vulnerable,
were just,
accountable,
yeah, I feel
abundant.
like that, even though a lot of those feel like feminine traits in a way, some of them
Mm,
do, it's kind of like there's like a masculine way you're approaching it, you know, with like I feel like vulnerability is a very more of a feminine trait. And then
interesting.
accountability feels more masculine, maybe. I don't know.
Well, what if you split each of those down the middle? So you got a feminine and masculine side of being vulnerable, where
Yeah.
even as an example, the masculine would be like, I'm going to actively create space for vulnerability right here. Like, think of like, I'm going to toss up the framework of a house so we have a space to be vulnerable and protected. And not just for you, but for me as well. Or, like not just for me, but for you as well. Like, almost like it brings up the protector side of like, wait a second, something's off right here. Can you feel how weird this conversation just got? Like, if there's tension, you like, can you feel
Yeah.
how we just like, what's that feeling? I felt the power dynamic shift. Let's create a space right now to be vulnerable. Would you be down to do that? And can you feel the masculine in that sense?
Yeah.
Whereas the feminine vulnerability is, I'm like, I don't know how to explain that side. I'm sure it's more like, what is it like? I don't know. Maybe you have thoughts on that.
I mean, I'm no expert. I just kind of dabble in this stuff, right? But
Same. Yeah.
but I feel like it's more just like open-ended, more kind of inviting,
Hmm.
sharing and inviting and kind of allowing the masculine to hold that space.
Yeah. I like that. I think these ideas are a little bit nebulous on purpose.
They
It's like,
are.
I think it's just a journey.
Hmm.
Another thought that popped up is like, well, can I go to a semi new thought about masculinity? Or
Yeah. Yeah.
because, yeah, while you were talking, I was thinking about like the little boy dynamic.
Mm.
A lot of men who struggle with porn are in little boy energy. Like, oh, my mom is telling me what to do. That's why they get into that with their wife. It's just like, oh, I have to do what she says or she'll be disappointed in me. I mean, holy cow. That's in, it's like every relationship I've worked with. It's like there's at least some of that, if not like a mountain of it. And the thing to realize is that I guess both, if that dynamic is truly going on, then both are in an kind of an unhealthy version of masculine and feminine, right? If the feminine is like mom being in mom mode, and the boy, the masculine is little boy mode, you got this weird dynamic. Like, it really breaks the connection and intimacy. So I think, one of you or both of you is going to have to shift, basically. You might as well be, if you're aware of it, then shift, for as far as like whose fault is it, there's going to be a lot of that. Like, oh, she treats me this way. And I'll be like, dude, no, let's figure out your side first, get all the way healed up. And then if your wife has still got some stuff, then we'll try and support her. But like, you got to be accountable. And I would say the same to the wife, which is a little scary because a lot of times it feels like, oh, this whole issue is just because my husband is looking at porn. He's the problem and I've got nothing to change. And honestly, if you want to do that, it's okay. He can change. But I think the more joyful thing is going to be to help for both spouses to step into a new way of interacting. Again, I'm kind of out in the weeds here, but I think it's so powerful to help men step into like their true masculine, to let go of, or even to just observe. If you get really honest with yourself and look for like, when do I feel like a little boy, that feeling will come up, and just start to notice like what situations bring that up. And then let's start to face like, why are you going into little boy mode in that situation? And then I think it's just a practice of figuring out a more powerful way to go forward.
Yeah. Is that kind of mainly how you bring that in with your clients?
Like
Just
helping them notice that.
like when you're talking about healthy masculinity with them, yeah, is it kind of like noticing the little boy, kind of seeing these more like kind of healthy masculine traits that we want to embody a little bit more?
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't been asked that in a long time, and I'm just realizing, like, oh, I don't say the word masculinity very
Mm,
much. Unfortunately, I think it's got a little bit of a trigger on it for guys. Like, one of the, I feel like it gets brought up as like, hey, I've got another thing you aren't doing right. And so I try to be, I think I'm trying to be careful of that. Like, so I would use all the language we talked about today, but I usually don't say like, hey, are you being masculine enough? It's more like, hey, let's create, like, I'll try to give them an example of how it could feel. Or I do a lot around accountability, vulnerable, abundant, and practice that dynamic. I'm honestly right now considering, I'm like, oh, I wonder if it would be better for me to talk about it more. But I do think there's a lot of trigger around it. So I'm kind of like thinking as I'm answering your question here.
well, I feel like people do get kind of hung up on this is my role and that's your role. And it can get a little bit like
Kind of hairy.
weird. Yeah, that way. So it's like, I feel like it's good to be aware, or maybe, just the way you're like bringing it up in a roundabout
Hmm.
way. I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of like how specific do you get, right?
Yeah, and
Because
I guess I would say I for sure when I have clients are like really towards the end of their, not the end, but like they're really healing up, then it's not scary to talk about. It's like, oh, let's talk masculinity directly now. So I do that. Right now, a lot of my clients are in a starting place. So it is sort of like it'd be like trying to talk about like hot air balloons, like something they don't quite have a grasp of in some ways. So yeah, I think we do like try to sprinkle in the principles and have them start to wrestle with that stuff. Another thought that's right here with this is when I do teach masculine and feminine too, or like any of these principles, I don't think there's a right way for a guy to be masculine, if that makes sense. Like, if I'm talking, because I think that also is one of the, maybe this is why it feels triggering. One of the issues that a lot of men feel is there's this outsourcing again of like who I should be. I should be something outside of me, whether it's, like a guy that's cooler than me or taller than me or gets more girls than me. Or even, I think there can even be a version of this that's like, oh, I need to be Jesus Christ, but I'm not him, versus like, oh, what if I could be the highest version of me with Jesus Christ? There's like a difference there. So I do think like masculine and feminine, I can still be like my highest masculine, but there's still gonna be places where I bring in a little bit of the feminine flow, right? Like no one's gonna be 100% one way or the other. And I think so maybe that's the other way I have approached that is like, let's help you figure out the best version of you. One of the ways I've loved finding that, helping people find that balance is human design.
yeah,
Have you done human design? Are you
I
familiar?
have, yeah, I am familiar a little bit. I don't think we've talked about it on the podcast at all,
Oh, nice.
but yeah,
Oh,
I'm definitely familiar.
it's crazy. I mean, I'm not an expert. I am in training right now, getting certified,
Uh,
but I basically anyone that's even possibly a tiny open to it, I'm like, let's do it right now. It's one of the most exciting ways of learning about people that I've ever seen. Tiny quick summary is I say this as a joke at the start, like, oh, it's really stupid because it's based on your birthday. Super dumb. Just, what the heck. And then right after that, it's also like the most accurate thing I've ever seen. I've taken, you can spend $70 to take like the Gallup strengths test, and that'll get you really cool results. Well, all my Gallup strengths results are actually in my human design for free. You just look it up with your birthday, and I found the same results over there. So one of the cool things about it though is it's really to help you figure out like how you're designed, right? So there will actually be some masculine and feminine stuff that will show up in your chart. That's really fascinating. So yeah, I think that's been one of the coolest things is to help people again, like instead of outsourcing, to turn inward and go, what am I meant to be? What am I here to create? What are my strengths? Yeah, I find so many cool, like all the guys I work with, it's so fun to see them light up when they realize, like, oh, I do have a strength underneath this struggle. There's beautiful gifts and strengths everywhere. So,
no, that's cool. I love that. I feel like you bring a lot of different modalities and just like wisdom in, and I think that's really cool. Like,
I try to be super prepared. Yeah. Because some people don't want to think about stuff in certain ways, you know, it's scary to think
mhm.
about it from a perspective they've never considered. And so try to have a lot of tools.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great. I wanted to jump into like, is there, how can men like, what can they do now to shift if they're in this place they don't want to be with porn or, some habits? What can they do?
Yeah, I have two thoughts kind of cooking. Your question is like, what can men do to sort of like start
Start shifting their,
shifting?
the way they see themselves, whatever it is, just kind of start shifting toward more what they are hoping for with their lives, I guess.
Yeah. I think it depends on where you're at. I'll give one that's like a super basic for those that are like, because okay, where I was back when my friend was like, "Oh, do you experience like shame?" Or she also, I think another friend was like, "You ever considered you might have like a savior complex?" And that was another one where I was like, "What does that mean?" Like, turns out that's like my whole life is trying to save everybody. I'd say if you're really, really early in your process, I'd say the very first step is you got to just start practicing awareness. Like just start to observe what you're thinking. You have to look at it. Look at what you're thinking, look at what you're feeling, and just practice that. Because for some of the guys, it's like they've never ever done that. It's all bad. I'm not supposed to think that or feel that. And then boom, crap, I looked at porn again. Ah, this sucks. I hate myself. And then you just do it again. I shouldn't think that. I shouldn't feel that. And boom, back into porn. And so the tactic they're trying is just like the hold on tight, white knuckle till they get to heaven or hell. I don't know. It's kind of a weird. It doesn't work, but that's what a lot of us try. So instead, like slow down, give yourself some space to like think about what you think and to feel about what you feel, just to observe. If you feel like you're already kind of in that state, I think, oh man, there's two thoughts. I think I'll start with the temptation. This is something I call the temptation equation. So the temptation equation is kind of this way of understanding where every temptation comes from. And this is like temptation of any kind. So see how this feels to you, anyone that's listening. I think that every temptation starts with a good desire. So that might sound counterintuitive, but first you start with a good desire plus a fear that you can't have that desire equals or leads to temptation or like loopholes or false versions of that desire. So classic example, like I usually ask guys like, so have you ever felt tempted to rob a bank? I'm like, no, definitely not. Yeah, me neither. For me, it's because I desire money, right, to like provide for my family, but I believe I can create that money. I haven't figured out how to create all the money I want, I'm still working on that, but I believe that I can honestly go and create money in my life. I can get a job or create a business or whatever. Therefore, I'm not tempted. Satan's not putting in a temptation for me to rob banks because it has nothing to do with my desire plus my fear. And so the same thing applies to pornography. Like there will be a good desire, like a truly good desire underneath your pornography struggle. And I would just invite men to start looking for what that is. What is because typically another like cultural thing we say about pornography is like, oh, if you're stressed or tired, or let's see, them stressed, tired, bored, or lonely. And they'll treat like, oh, those are the root causes. To me, those are not root causes at all. I think there's stuff way beneath that. And this is one of the ways to figure that out is to say, what's the good thing that I desire that I'm afraid I can never have? And then how is porn plugging into that as a fake version of the desire? So, it's good to have someone kind of coach you through a place people can start just to give some ideas of things I found in myself and that my clients have found would be like a desire for like really close, intimate connection where you can just be yourself. But most of my guys have a huge fear that if they are themselves, they're going to get rejected. If they show what they really think and feel, their wife will reject them or won't love them. Right. So, okay, I can't be myself. So the next best thing is, you know, whatever it is, either And I'll actually say it this way: the temptation isn't just pornography. The temptation is also to hide yourself. The temptation is to pretend, to lie, to act a certain way when other people are around, and then to change the way you act when they're not around. And you can see how that builds and builds to like pornography is a way you can get a pretend closeness where you can fantasize about being loved for who you are, and think of the symbol of taking your clothes off and being seen naked and still being wanted is totally a symbol for, oh, I wish I could show my whole mind and my whole heart to someone and still be wanted. So that's just one example of like, I think the struggle with pornography will actually teach you some of the deepest things you've ever learned about yourself, for the men out there, and for women if they struggle. But yeah, any questions on that equation? Is that making sense? Did I say that in an okay way?
I think it makes sense. Yeah. Because even like if you struggle with phone addiction, like there's just so many. I always kind of think of like whenever I'm wanting to like just numb or check out, or if I'm like wanting to emotionally eat or something, it's kind of like, okay, what's really going on here? So I think
Mm-hmm.
asking yourself what the good desire is another way to really get deep in there, maybe
Yeah.
deeper than sometimes I'm like, do I just need a hug? Do I just need to like what's going on? But yeah, I love that. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's very helpful.
Yeah, it's been pretty eye-opening for me too, like to use that with anything. If I'm angry at my kids, or if I'm, whatever thing I'm feeling, I'll just like loosely refer to that as the temptation. And then just like, what is the good desire? What I love about it is the starting point is the opposite of what we've been doing, which is I'm bad and
I
I
was gonna
shouldn't be
say,
wanting porn.
yeah,
Instead, the starting point is like, wait, what if I'm actually really good? I'm like a divine being. I'm a child of God, and I have a good desire that I've had for a long time. Like maybe since the beginning, I've had this good desire to be like in a connected relationship, or I have a good, I have a huge desire to whatever, have like a powerful life mission or change the world or whatever. But then as soon as you get that fear that you can't do it, then you'll start looking for like fake ways to do it. And so it's cool if you can actually trace in that way. It actually allows you to like trace the temptation back to the good part of you, or the good desire that you have. And as you walk it back and recommit to the desire, that's kind of like abundance, right?
mhm,
As you recommit to like, maybe I can create this desire with God, then it changes the equation, and the temptation no longer comes in. So
yeah,
in a way, like if you are willing to practice this pattern, it's kind of, I jokingly say it's like in your face to Satan, because anytime he brings up temptation, I'm going to be like, oh wait, I'm feeling tempted. All right, let me figure out my fear and my desire, and then boom, I'm going to go shift. So that's another very masculine way to take that, right? Instead of like running and hiding from temptation and, oh, I shouldn't feel this way, I actually, like, I literally picture in my mind when temptation comes up, I like turn and face it. I'm like, wait, what is this? I want you to show me what's really here. And then for me, I go to my higher power and say, can you teach me how to crack this open? I know there's something good at the bottom of this temptation. There's a good desire in here. And I have found it like on every temptation possible. There is always a good desire. I think that's how temptation works. Like it's literally the equation. And so it becomes such a cool way to overpower the darkness in your life and just say, anytime the temptation comes in, I will turn, face it, and like learn about myself, and then recommit to the good desire. And
yeah.
boom, it's a
I
cool
love that.
process.
I feel like it sucks all the shame out of it, for one
Yeah.
thing. And then it's also kind of, to me, I feel like God will alchemize everything for our good. And it's really hard to see that sometimes, but I feel like that process helps you see, like, oh, this is what this is teaching me, and this is how I can flip it on its head and shift it around.
Yeah. So fun. I like
So,
that word too, that God
yeah,
alchemizes, turns it all to good. Because yeah, we've done so much of like, oh, I'm bad if I think this way, or that's a bad emotion. I don't know if that's true. It's all something, you know.
yeah,
Everything is something. But
yeah,
then if you're willing to look at it from the right angle, God will teach you about everything you face.
yeah. No, I love that. Yeah. Was there anything else with
Oh yeah. The question of remind me of the question one more time.
Just like what can you do right now to shift things the
Right.
way that
Okay.
you
So
want them
yeah,
to?
I say step one is start looking at those temptations as an opportunity to learn about your desire. Another great one is, I mean, it's basically back to what I said before, but you've got to start asking questions that you haven't asked before. So if you feel like you can, be prayerful, like that's one of my favorite prayers to God is like, can you give me a question that I've never asked? Or can you help me ask the right question in this moment? If you struggle with that, getting the right questions, like talk to someone you trust or come talk to me, whatever. But one of the coolest questions that I would invite you to look at and maybe just to journal on, if you can like slow down a little bit and figure out, let's say like if you're still struggling with porn on a regular basis, try to get honest with yourself and ask like, what are you actually looking for? Because if you were finding it, you wouldn't need to keep going back. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like if I was like looking for a car and I got a car, I'd be done after I got the car. But the fact that you keep going back means you're looking for something that you're not finding. And so it's honestly a pretty similar question, right? It's like, what do you desire and what are you afraid you can't actually get? But it's a little bit different perspective on that. That's like, it's kind of weird to say it this way, but like, it's almost like practicing self-awareness about what are you actually thinking when you're looking at porn? And I'm not suggesting like, hey, go look at porn and notice what you think. More like go to last time and just like, what am I searching? Why am I searching it? How am I searching it? I've got a lot of guys who do this thing where like, oh, I scroll through social media and I'm kind of secretly hoping something pops up. It's like, dude, that's a symbol for something. The like, notice why you're doing it that way. Do you think it's better if it just pops up to you, or is there this metaphor in your life of like the world is happening to me, or is that a symbol for not wanting to work for love? And maybe a woman could just show up and be like, hey, you're awesome, I want to love you, you know what I mean? Like I'm saying non-sexually, is that a symbol for just actually being okay as you are? I don't know, there's stuff to learn from it. I would invite people out there to like look at, what are you thinking about when you watch? Like, are you fantasizing about like, wow, if I could be loved like that, or wow, if I could just have someone adore me? Or are you thinking about, wow, I wish I could be confident with my body? Like those are the real things we're trying to figure out. So let's go build confidence with the body. Let's go, you know figure out how to create those desires in a way that's tangible and real, instead of living in fantasy land where you're going to have to keep coming back over and over forever unless something changes. Like that really is the pattern of porn. It will never ever satisfy. There's like however many millions of hours of porn that get created every year, and it will not satisfy a single person. And so, and I that's not at all with a shame tone there. It's sort of like a wake up and like, why don't we look at what you're trying to satisfy? That's really the question. So
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like the only other thing I was going to say that in like a crash course kind of thing was just like the drama triangle. Can I talk about that for a sec?
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about the three, like accountable, vulnerable, and abundant. Let's like package those up and toss them over here for a second. The other way to start changing things is to look at your relationships, probably your most important ones. And I want to share a thing called the drama triangle. It's a way to understand the dynamics in your relationships. When we're in drama, there's basically three roles that we play. That's why it's a triangle, 3 points. And so you've got the hero trying to save everybody, the victim, where you're like giving up accountability or you're blaming other people, and then the villain, where you're like in bad guy mode, like trying to hurt people or punish them or punish yourself. And what's interesting is, if you take a minute and think through like your last several days or last time you had a hard conversation with your spouse or whatever, you may notice that you're in the drama triangle quite a bit, either choosing to rescue someone else from their feelings like the hero, trying to get rid of the accountability and say, oh, it's not my fault that it's not my fault I'm this way, or that life is this way, I'm the victim, or to be in villain mode, which is like usually more like bitterness, like, oh, I can't believe you did that to me. Now I'm going to insult you or hurt you back or make you feel bad. And what you'll notice is those three roles are very powerless ways to interact. It's like they're almost all attempts to grab power. Like even the hero, oh, I guess I'll say this. The hero, it's tempting to think that the hero is the good one. But if you think about, I picture like the classic Batman movie. Like let's think about the patterns of what a hero experiences. The hero wears a mask, so it kind of hides his identity. The hero is usually alone, trying to do everything on their own. The hero, like even when they do a ton, they usually don't feel appreciated. People often actually paint them as the bad guy, like Batman, like, oh, stop trying to save us, you're ruining things or whatever. And so when that happens, that's when the hero will slide to either the victim or the villain, right? Batman goes into like, well, forget you guys. I'm going to just like do what I want. Or he might go to victim and be like, fine, I'm not going to help anymore. I'm just going to be sad in my house or whatever. And so that's the idea is I would invite you to just look for when you switch roles or when do you go into one of those three roles, and to realize that that's like a cycle of powerlessness, of just like I'm trying to grab power by shifting the dynamic. And we can go way deeper into that in a one-on-one conversation sometime. But what's cool is once you start to identify where you're doing the drama triangle, the way to get out of drama is actually those three principles from before: accountability, vulnerability, and abundance. And I'll help you plug them in real quick. Like, think about the hero for a sec. I know it's a lot to digest, but the hero wears a mask, and the antidote for the hero is actually to take off the mask and be vulnerable and to show your cards. It's that same thing. Let me tell you what I'm actually feeling. Let me tell you what's actually going on in my mind. And can you hear how much more powerful that is? Like, let me just be honest. Let me tell you the truth. The victim needs to take accountability, right? Because they're trying to put the blame on everyone else. That one's pretty obvious. The victim needs to say, okay, I can be accountable for my emotions and my choices. I chose to come to earth, or I chose to get married, or I chose to be in this family. I chose to drive a car today. So I'm not a victim. When I got in a car accident, I chose. I mean, it still sucks, but I chose to be here. And then the villain, this one is like one of my favorite breakthroughs when I realized that every villain, think of every movie ever, every villain is actually stuck in scarcity, believing that they can't have the thing they desire. Can you hear how we're back to the temptation equation, right? Like, I can't have the thing I desire, so I need to get it in a fake way. I need to take it. I need to force it on people. I need to hurt other people to get what I want. So every villain is stuck in scarcity. And so the antidote is actually to be abundant, or to choose to practice abundance, which, for if anyone out there doesn't love that word abundance, some people are like, what's that? It sounds too hippie. It's really just like confident that you can create. So every villain is insecure in their creative ability. And to step out of that is to practice being confident that you can create. And so, like, if I say this to people sometimes, like, if I were to die right now and I couldn't help any more clients, like, I would totally say, please just like get a group together and talk about the drama triangle and the three antidotes. Just like learn about how to step out of drama, how to notice when you're in drama and step out into accountable, vulnerable, abundant. And yeah, that has changed every relationship I've ever been in. It's all different because I started to practice that.
Oh, that's awesome. It feels very complete. Like when you brought the last piece together and linked it back, I was like, oh yeah, this makes sense. And I'm kind of excited to go apply it to my own life. Like, yeah,
Nice.
that's cool. That's very cool.
I'm so grateful. Yeah, I'm really grateful to get to share that. That's one of my favorite things that I've ever learned. The drama triangle is something that's out there and talked about quite a bit.
Mhm.
But one time I had a client, after I taught him the drama triangle, because I usually will say all this stuff like, oh, you just need to go, like, this is the solution, go practice your desires. Or like, I didn't know exactly what to say. And then he was like, how do I get out? I'm in drama all day. How do I get out? And I was like, dude, that's such a beautiful question. And I literally just heard in my mind the three words: vulnerable, accountable, abundant. I feel like God just was like, here you go. And ever since then, I've been learning about why that's true. Like, what do these mean? how do I apply them? How do I practice them? So I'm grateful it connected for you.
Yeah, yeah, that's it's really cool. So if we have people in our life, like friends or family, who are dealing with this that have like been vulnerable with us, I don't know if you have any thoughts on like how we can support them or show up for people or
Yeah, I mean, first, right, is like you do need to take care of yourself. So if you're like the wife of a husband, and if it's triggering the crap out of you, I'd say don't pretend like it doesn't. Just say like this is really hard for me to talk about. I want to talk more after I get some help for myself. Or like give yourself space. It's okay for it to be hard for you. And then if you for someone who is in more of a like a neutral, like, hey, I'm just here to support, I think, I'm always down for like share one of these principles with them, share like the temptation equation is very simple: desire, fear, temptation. And I hate to just say the most obvious thing in the world, but I think just love them and be willing to support. But then also like maybe helping them practice some of the, like practice accountability, helping coach them through, like just notice, like be willing to listen with love, and then also like be willing to point out with love, like, hey, I don't think this the way you're talking about that, I don't think that's true. If you're going to get into the trenches with them and really discuss it. And then I'd say that if you want to go for another really simple one, it's just like try to help them let go of the shame. It's just not, the shame is never going to work. So invite them to step into something different and just love the heck out of them.
okay. One more question. I like to ask everybody that's on if they have a book or a resource that they'd recommend to just whoever's listening, can be related to what we're talking about or not. But
Mm-hmm.
just something to share. I want this to be a good resource for people, this podcast.
Nice. Yeah, I have an online course
Mhm.
that has all this stuff in depth. It's also it's a work in progress, as in that makes it sound like it's not finished. More like I'm always updating to make sure it's got like the most core principles. So I have that available, and then I have like a free part of it that's like the bare bones that you can get anytime. So that's on my website, kysonkid.com. And you'll just go like there to courses, and you can hop in and sign up. So that's awesome. And then I'm trying to think what other. I'd say mostly that course is just awesome. It'll give you like questions to ponder. It's all video course so that you can actually just watch a video instead of like have to read. I hate reading. So that's why I did that. And then I'd say the other resource would be just reach out for a free consultation. I have a lot of people, like, my intention is just to like actually help people, So I had a guy reach out like a year and a half after our first free call. We just did a free call and that was it. And he sent me $100 to say thanks, because he's like, dude, I've been off of porn for a year and a half, like from our phone call. I was like, really? I had no idea, man. So, I'm down to I just help people. And if we end up being a great fit for coaching, awesome. We can talk about that. My goal is really just to have an impact and help people get free from the porn, free from the stuff. So
Wonderful. Awesome. And then do you want to go over really quickly just how is the website the best way to get in touch with you? What are your socials? How do people find you?
yeah.
What are your offerings too? Like, what are all your offerings?
Yeah, my website is great. It's got like a contact thing, and you can set up the free calls and stuff. You can also reach out to my socials. I'm just Kyson Kidd everywhere. So yeah, you can reach out. The main things I offer would be like coaching on any subject too. If you like the way I think and talk about stuff, like I coach around anxiety, I've done stuff around OCD, healthy boundaries with family, overcoming manipulation. That's a huge one lately. Is like, oh, my parents are manipulative. How do I, whatever? My sister's manipulative. So that kind of stuff. So just general coaching. I also do a thing called soul songs, where I create a song for you, kind of like download a song to help you with whatever you're wanting to grow and heal. So I'll do a little bit of coaching mixed with the music there. And what's, I guess, something worth mentioning with my coaching, I'm kind of in an interesting place the last 6 or 8 months, where I've shifted away from the rigid structure of like, this is how much I charge. And what I actually place first is like, are we a great fit? Like, do I feel like this is a win, right? Is this a win for me? Is it a win for you? Are we supposed to work together? And then from there, we can decide on a price. I usually present that with the tone of like, what do you feel inspired to invest in yourself? And I'll do my, if I feel like it's a great fit, then we'll create a situation where we can work together. So for anyone that feels called to check that out, I'd love to talk with you. I feel like every coaching call, every conversation just feels like a miracle to me. It's so fun to get to help people see themselves, to allow them to be vulnerable, to take accountability, to shift. It's an awesome journey. So yeah, if anyone feels called to that, I'd love to work with you. And then with my soul songs, I do have a little more of a pricing because it takes like 10 hours.
Mm.
But that's something that's been really fun to create for people too. So
Yeah.
yeah, anyone can hit me up. I'd love to work with you.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. And we'll link everything below. But yeah, thanks a million for talking to me. What did
Yeah,
you have
you're
one more
so
thing?
welcome. I just remembered one other offering that is very free, super accessible is just my music. I forgot to talk about that.
Oh,
So I just have a lot of like healing, meditative music, feel good music. It's kind of imagine like yoga meditation music that's like still really relatable. It's not too spacey, like it's very like you can actually feel it, very tangible. So that's all under Kyson Kidd. And then I have another project, the Healers playlist. So I can get you links for both of those. So yeah.
awesome. Well, thanks so much. I'm hoping this will just create a lot of good for people. And I'm just so grateful to have you on.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen. It's been way fun.
Thank you so much for listening. If you are enjoying Holy Empowered, share it with that friend or on your socials. You can also hit the follow button if you want to keep up with the latest episodes. Until next time, stay empowered.